Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our Swift programming tutorial series, and in this particular video we are going to be talking about how we can handle errors, how we can throw errors, and how we can handle errors a little bit more gracefully using the result type. So let's get into it. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the contents of a file. And I have the path to the file already in a variable in the code. And then I have the basic structure, or the basic signature for a method. This is the method that we're going to work, or the function that we're going to work with. Okay? So the first thing that we want to do is we want to prepare this method to be able to throw an error. And to do that, in Xcode, before the return type, before we say this should return a string, we need to use the throws keyword. So throws. There we go. Now, Swift will know that, hey, this method is meant to throw an error at some point. All right. So now, inside of our little method here, what we can do is we can go ahead and say var text string is equal to an empty string, and we can say do, or actually what we can do instead, I guess, is we can just say do try, like this, or instead, before try, we need to say var text, or we can even do a let instead, let text equals try string contents of file. And so we can then pass in this file path, and there we go. Okay. So now what we can do is we can, let's see, there we go. We can then return text like that, but we also need to handle the error that is potentially thrown by the string initializer there. And to do that, we need to use what's called a catch block. So catch. And in here, we're just going to throw the error. Okay. And there we go. So this is our function that throws an error, and that we have to then catch and handle when we call this method. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through this one more time. Oh, wait, I just realized something. We can say path, not file path, because we need to put in the parameter to the function, not the variable outside of the function. All right. So in the signature, we're calling this function read file. This takes in a file path as a string, and this we then say, hey, this function can throw an error. It throws, so be aware of that. Okay, and then we say, oh, and by the way, this function will return a string. Inside of this method, or this function, whatever you want to call it, we have a do block. And inside of this do block, inside the do block, this will hold the code that can throw an error. And any code that can throw an error belongs in a do block. And so because the string initializer that we're using that takes in the path to a file is marked as throws, it can throw an error. So we need to mark that with the try keyword before we call that initializer. So we have var text equals, and then we try to read the content from the file and initialize the string initializer with the contents of that file at the specific path that we provide as a parameter. And if that was successful, we can then move to the next line of the do block, which is to return the text from the file. If that fails, it goes down to the catch block. And inside the catch block, we are just throwing the error back up. We're throwing it back out. All right. So, how do we call this method then? Well, well, to call this method, what we can do is we can say let file contents, or, well, I guess what we can do before then is we can say do, and then in here we're going to create a variable called file, or a constant called file contents, and this will store the value from our method that gets returned. So let file contents equals read file path. Now we're getting file path from above our function. Now you might have noticed an error that we have. And that is I did not prefix the function call with the try keyword. So now we're trying to execute the function. And if we can indeed call the function and store the value it returns, we want to print file contents. If it doesn't succeed, we want to catch the error that we're getting. And we will print error.localized description. Now, what is this error thing that we are referring to? We don't have any variables or constants defined anywhere called error. Well, that's because Swift implicitly for you has an error inside every catch block. So for every catch block, Swift creates an error for you from from the context of what can potentially be thrown. This is an error type. Here later in the video I'll show you how to create your own custom errors, but just know that Swift creates this error for us in the catch block. And we can choose to use it, or we can choose not to use it. Swift won't complain either way. Okay? And what is this localized description property on the error that we're calling then as well? Well, the localized description property essentially gives us the error message that comes along with the error. And this is typically used for debugging, so we can put it in the console and stuff like that. In custom errors, we can define a localized description to have a user-friendly error that in, for example, say a macOS app or an iOS app, we can display the localized description of that error in an alert to let the user know, hey, this is what happened, there was an error, and tell them how they can resolve that, or if something is wrong with the system itself, right? So that's how we can do that. Now that we have this, let's go ahead and save our code. Let's build it first. We can see build succeeded. Let's run our code then. Perfect. Okay. And it's asking, when you do this, it's asking permission. It'll ask permission to access files in a specific place. Just allow it. And so if you don't allow it, it will have some sort of error for you. But for now, we're allowing it. Let's go into our console. And there's all of the text inside of that path. So the text from the file at the path that we specified is being printed to the console, and that's exactly what we wanted to happen. But what if we give it a directory that doesn't exist? What do we do then? So let's go up here. Let's say that the file extension isn't even txt, and the file extension is, say, CSV or something. We can save this, run it. You can see it doesn't ask us for permission again to access anything in the desktop directory because it's already done so. We're going to go into our console here. And you can see it printed out the localized description for our error that we caught. And it basically tells us that the file couldn't be read because the file doesn't exist. So that is how we can throw errors, how we can catch them, and how we can handle them in a semi-graceful way. Now, let's modify this method to return a result type. But first, what we're going to need is we're going to need a custom error to handle what we want to do here. And we want to change the extension on the file to .txt. Okay, so there we go. Now, above everything except import foundation, beneath that, we're going to create an enum. And we're going to call this, file error. Now file error must conform to error. So colon, capital E, error, like that. And this is pretty much how we can define our own custom errors. We have to have a case for every error that we want. In this case, it'll be case file read error. There we go. And let's go ahead and create a localized description. To do this, we can use a computed property. So var localized description, like that. And in here we can say switch on self, because self is an enum. And we can say case dot case dot there we go. Case dot it'll be we want file read error. There we go. Xcode and VoiceOver were both being uncooperative there for a second. And so once we have that case in our switch, we will return the file couldn't be read. This was caused by the fact that the file does not exist. Okay, we can save that, and that is our custom error. Now, let's go ahead and go down to our function here. I'm going to give us a little bit more room. All right. So the first thing that we need is to change the signature. And primarily the only thing that needs to be changed about the signature is, first off, we need to get rid of throws, because this is no longer going to throw any errors. Now, this is going to cause some errors below the function, but we'll fix those. All right. Then we need to return a result type. Now, here's the thing. When we return a result type, it takes in two generic parameters that we need to specify. The first being the type that gets returned with the result in a success case. And then the second one is the type that's going to come along with the failure case. In this case, a failure is going to result in an instance of our custom error. So to do this, we need to say capital R, ESULT, less than, string, because we want to return the contents of the file if it was successful. And then, if there was a problem, in the failure case, we want to return an instance of file error. And then do your greater than sign there. And there we go. That is the signature modified. Now we need to modify the body of the method a little bit. We still need our do, try, catch inside of the method here, but we need to modify the return statement inside of our do block. Instead of returning the text directly, we need to return .success. And then, inside of the success, we're going to pass it text. Now, I want to specify here that if your method doesn't return any data, like doesn't return a string, an int, or a double, or whatever, but you still want to return a result, you can have it return a void, capital VOID, in a success case. And that basically allows you to, that basically allows you to not have and not need to pass any kind of specific value to the success. When we call it like this, I'll show you what I mean here in a second, but let's finish modifying our method. So now that we have our success returned, in our catch block, we're throwing the error. Well, we can get rid of that code entirely. And instead, we need to return .failure. And so the failure here, the failure case, takes in a file error like we specified. And to do that, we can just say dot let's see, let's make sure we got this right. Dot failure dot file read error. There we go, file read error. And that is our method. We've just modified our method there, and we shouldn't have any errors anymore. Okay, now below our function, we can instead of having our do, try, catch down here, we can say let result equals read file path. And now we need to switch on the result, because remember, our method now returns a result type, and result acts like an enum because it pretty much is an enum with a failure or a success case. So inside of our switch, we need to say case dot success. Inside of the parentheses here, we can define a constant that will represent the string returned as the success case. So let file contents. We can print file contents. Case dot failure let error. We can print error dot localized description. Let's save this and run our code. We get a build failed. Let's see what went wrong here. Okay, we can say case dot, what else did we do? Success, failure, we can say default print something else. Let's see. Okay, let's try that again. Because, once again, Xcode is being uncooperative. Switch. Results. Case.success. Let file contents. Print file contents. Case.failure. Let error. Print error.localized description. Save that. Now let's try to run our code. There we go. Build succeeded. Let's go into our debug area and into our console. You can see we get the text from the file again. And if we change .txt to .csv, we can say instead of txt, it's CSV. Save, run. Go into our console. And you can see we get our localized description for our custom error. Right? And so that pretty much does it for this video on catching errors, throwing errors, creating your own custom errors, and using the result type. So thank you all so very much for watching, and we will see you all in the next one.